Good morning, everybody. So getting paid on time, absolutely critical to your business. So making profit is critical. Cash flow is the thing that keeps the wheels turning, that makes your business develop. And when you do work for a client and for a customer, it's absolutely vital to get paid on time. All of us have been in that situation where we've not been paid on time, and it creates a number of challenges for us as well. And that's the theme of today's topic. So I'm Mahmood. I'm going to be hosting this broadcast for the next 20 minutes, half an hour. It might drift on, who knows. So the theme is getting paid on time. That's the key focus here. And I've summed it up nicely. I'm just going to introduce my little feline friend here in terms of being, for me, more cat. So a bit of technological issues there. Let's share our screen and bang. Oh, that's not a good one. That's a much better one. So I hope you've all had a brilliant week. Hope your businesses are surviving and thriving. And what I want us to focus on today here is about this idea of getting paid on time. So imagine the situation here. We're working hard in our businesses. We deliver those services to our customers. We present that invoice to our customer, and then we wait, hoping that that customer will pay us in the time that we've asked them to. If you're a cash business, so if you're a retailer, you're not really going to have the same challenges here, because obviously when you offer goods to people, they pay for them at the time of delivery. If you've got an online business, it's likely, if you're selling things like tangible products here, it's likely that nobody's going to take an order from you unless you get the cash up front for them. If you happen to be a business that says, I'm not actually going to do anything until you pay that money, cash to me, then obviously this is not going to be a major challenge for you in terms of getting paid on time. For the vast majority of businesses, myself included here, obviously what happens is we provide a service, we sell goods, we provide that, we do the work, we do what we do to our best ability, customers happy, and then that time lag happens between the work being done and getting that money into our bank accounts. Now you may be thinking, well, that's not really a major issue. Well, it is, in the sense that as we run our businesses, we've got costs that we've got to meet. So we've got supplier bills that we've got to pay out for. If you've got an office space, then obviously you've got rent on that office. You've got rates, you've got all the relating utilities. If you've got a vehicle that you've got to run, you've got to buy fuel for it. You've got to pay for the ongoing costs of that. For yourself, you've got to take money out of the business to survive. You've got to reward yourself. You may have a team. All those things coming into effect, and therefore you've got to balance up the money coming into your business, the money going out, and you've got to make it work somehow. And the key source of that cash coming in is from your clients. For those of you catch up on replay, come on board. We're talking about getting paid on time, being more cat. I think there's a hashtag replay. Click that. Just in terms of give you a bit of background before we dive deeply into this here. So I've been advising people on their numbers, how to run their businesses from a finance point of view, from a numbers point of view, for over 25 years. So what I'm going to share with you today, by the way, just like any practitioner, any person here, giving the advice is easier. I will confess, I don't always take that advice myself. So some of these things here I've learned through bitter experience. Some of these things I've learned in terms of, because it's good business disciplines here. But all of us aspire and try to do the best we can in our businesses. Just because you may not actually take your own advice doesn't actually mean that the advice itself is incorrect. So what do we mean about being more cat? I'm not suggesting, by the way, that we all adopt a feline posture, though I have to say they're one of my favorite animals. But effectively, the CAT represents an acronym to actually explain what we need to do to actually get paid on time. Now, these things aren't easy, by the way, so please don't run away with the idea that, oh, you just do these things here. Businesses are fundamentally involving human beings, and the interaction that we have with those businesses, there's people behind those businesses, there's people who run those businesses here, that human dimension really comes into it a lot. So emotion, common sense, and practice, it's a big heady mix of things going on. So by the power of magic, what do we mean by cat? And it comes up here and miraculously in front of us. So here's the first thing, the C. Your culture, for me, and by culture, I'm as much talking about your attitude, your mindset to how you see the whole situation about getting paid on time. So our approach, really dictates about how any effective credit control is going to kick in. Now, by approach, it could be, and we've all experienced this here, we've got to be like an octopus in our businesses. We've got lots of things going on. Not only do we have to deliver the service that we're good at, not only are we selling the products that we stock, not only actually carrying out the work that our clients want from us, there are other things that are, demanding our attention and time. So things like updating the accounts, things like sending out invoices, things like contacting suppliers, things like marketing and promoting your business, things like developing your own self here, all those things that go on, responding to inquiries, dealing with those inquiries, it's a frenetic amount of time that we consume here. And it may be that we think actually getting the invoices out to clients is something that, we'll do it when we get home. When we get home, we might be a little bit tired. We might do it the weekend. We might have a set time. It may be that when we issue invoices, somebody's a bit late. For whatever reason, we're not actually chasing them up. And I don't mean aggressively here. We're not reminding them. We're not actually following up on these things here. And if we've got a very casual approach to these things here, it can actually build up to something here. So you've got to have a mindset that's set that says, actually, credit control is not a minor role in my business. It's something that's quite important here as well. Other things to consider is the policy. Do you actually have a policy? Now, by policy, this also fits with mindset. I'm not talking about, do you have a massive document here, a 38-page credit policy here, but are you doing things in what I call a more formal, structured way? And again, this is what I've been aspiring to do in my own businesses with a better degree of success. I see it in lots of other businesses. Anybody who's completely systemized, that's fantastic. Again, blend it with that little bit of human dimension. So what do I mean by policy? So for example, we're very excited when we take on a client. They believe in what we're offering, and we start discussing terms and conditions at the beginning. And the policy might be, before I take on a customer, it might be, is there any way that I can check that customer is actually what I call creditworthy? Now, sometimes it may not be possible. There are things such as, Experian, Equifax, these credit reference agencies, that might be an option. Number two, do you actually, when you grant credit facilities, do you actually think about how much credit will I give you? Now remember, giving credit to any business has a degree of risk attached to it. In an ideal universe, we always like to have things transacted for cold, hard cash. I do a job for you. As I've done the job, money hits my bank account. Before I do the job for you, money is paid into my bank account. That's obviously the preferred method. The challenge is with businesses that if we say to a client, we won't do it unless you pay us straight away, that client might understandably say, well, actually, that's fair enough. Mahmood, I'll go elsewhere. I will go there. And then obviously you've got to think yourself is, what's the likelihood of that business being lost? If I got something quite unique in my business that I can stand firm. But whatever happens, most of us, business to businesses, will be dealing with lines of credit there as well. So think about your policy. Is it a 7-day? Is it 14 days? Do you take a deposit up front from that client? What's your policy for if things are late? What's your follow-up action? Do you send the boys around with a comedy baseball bat straight away? Do you think about court action? Do you send them a nice reminder letter or a strongly worded one as time goes on? What's the procedure that you've got internally for how you deal with those people who don't pay on time, how you give them credit facilities in the first place? How much credit should you give somebody? Should you say, okay, if I'm going to do some work for you, it doesn't exceed maybe 500 quid. As I get to know you better, as the relationship strengthens, then I can increase the credit limit accordingly. Critically, at the very start of things, one tip I will share with you amongst many others, at the very beginning, when you start to engage with that client, get something in writing. Now, I don't mean, again, a 58-page document, but a simple email I would suggest at the very beginning of the conversation. And I'm a big fan that when you start dealing with a new client or an existing client, perhaps, is that you establish how you're going to both be engaging with each other. So the client knows what they want from you in terms of the work to be provided. You define the scope of the work with the client. That's pretty much standard. Most businesses will do that. Then you need to say at the outset, to summarize it, I would suggest probably in an email, if you don't want to do a formal contract, is to say, this is what we've agreed to do for you. Just to remind you, our terms of business are 30 days or 14 days, whatever time lag you wanted to adopt from the completion of the work. Money is going to be paid into this particular account. And also I would probably identify, if it's a larger business you're dealing with, who's the person in their organisation, who's the department that receives the invoices, processes it. Do you need a purchase order number? So again, get some clarity at the beginning. If somebody is not prepared, by the way, to accept an email confirmation or a contract, for me, it's those big warning lights that go on and you need to walk away from that transaction. Most businesses will understand that when business is done, there's going to be some form of formality there. Most of the problems that I've helped clients out with myself, and sometimes when it's happened on me and I've had my fingers burnt a few times, is there's no clarity at the beginning in terms of what those terms and conditions were. Some people feel very uncomfortable, understandably, about having money and financial conversations at the early stages of a business relationship. My personal view is that's actually the optimum time to have those discussions. So clarify what you're going to be doing, clarify what your terms of business are, and get it in writing. And again, a simple summary email saying, thanks for the job, thanks for the opportunity, these are the main things here, this is our terms of business, just hit return. And once you've done that, ladies and gentlemen, you've got yourself a contract. Monitoring, absolutely key, as lots of these things are, that you've got to be able to keep an eye on what's going on here. And I will hold my hands up. Over the years, it's been challenging. Luckily for me, or how the way my business has developed, all matters of credit control now, I remove myself from that because I'm the one who's doing the work with my team. You know, it makes sense to have somebody else separate to do that. If you haven't got the resources, by the way, I'll share some tips with you about how we can still keep an eye on these things. If you're a one-person operation, if you've only got a very small team here, you don't need a massive department to do proper credit control. You need a mindset, you need a system, you need policies, and we're going to shoehorn a bit of technology in there as well. So make sure you keep an eye on these things. Now, two things to bear in mind. The moment something becomes overdue, so if you do the work today, ideally the invoice goes out today as well, it's got a trigger that says the money should be in my bank account by this point in time. Now, what you've got to bear in mind is if there's a slippage for good reason or bad, and there's no follow-up action, what will happen is that builds in an extra period of time. And what will be going on, ladies and gentlemen, is that you will be funding that person's business. That's not the way it should be. So you need a trigger point to say, oh, actually, the invoice has been late. You don't have to get heavy. A reminder to that client saying the invoice is due. When are we going to get payment? So you need to keep an eye on what's going on here. And certainly if there's a lot going on in your business life and otherwise, you know, keep an eye on these things can become protracted, but there are always solutions. Numbers, absolutely key for me, as it would be. How many days late? My personal view is a day late is a day late. If you said 30 days, you haven't said 31. So the moment it becomes overdue, then you should be communicating with that client. As a tip, by the way, I like to recommend to people that if something is coming up for payment at, say, the end of a month, you might want to have a communication with the client before the end of that month to say, here's your statement, this is what's going on, and just to remind you that the money is due. So again, word it in your own language. Don't try and be more formal and top heavy. However you communicate with your client is the language that you should be putting into these letters. Let's progress on. What's the next thing we're going to talk about? So we've talked about culture, we talked about mindset, we talked about attitude. Action. Policies are brilliant. What we think we're going to do is brilliant, but ultimately it's action that actually changes things here. So if we've got a policy that's not being complied with, and again, remember, it could be good reasons, it could be bad reasons. So don't automatically go there with all guns blazing, think this customer is late. There could be a positive reason for it. We all have busy inboxes. We all forget these things here. If somebody hasn't nudged us and said, by the way, your bill is due or whatever, then what it will happen is it might slip naturally. Some of your customers might be a little bit roguish, shall we say. Let's be polite in live broadcasts. They might be a little bit more challenging. You may have alternative words that you've got for them, and they may have deliberately held back. Now, certainly if you're slow in following up reminders, if you're slow of getting out those bills, then that might reinforce to a customer that you've got a relatively weak credit control system. So we've all done it in our lives in terms of when there are bills to be paid, we might think, actually, I can delay this one by a couple of days, or I can delay that one by a few days. I've got cash flow problems. You know, it's a perfectly natural thing to have. What you don't want to do is to make that a systemic and endemic part of your business. So it's signals. So when you delay in sending out reminders, or when you delay sending out invoices here, that might indicate some weakness in your credit control. And maybe the customer thinks, well, they're not that bothered. You know, they're a bit more relaxed. They've got the money, which is a bizarre way of thinking. But, you know, we all think different things in the absence of any hard evidence. Be assertive. Now, I don't mean aggressive. I mean assertive. If you're in that situation, by the way, you're finding it difficult to have these conversations, I'll share a tip with you at the end of this slide here. So be assertive. It's not can you pay, it's about when will you pay. If there are things that we can do to make it easier for the client, that's what we should do. So payment plans are an option. That's always should be done. If you agree anything with a client, make sure you've got it written down somewhere. Have it written down and say, okay, thanks for the chat over the phone. Thanks for your recent communication. I appreciate you've got challenges in your business, as we all do. We want to do our best to help you out. So what we're prepared to do is X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z is representing what you feel you're happy doing. You may think, actually, I want to be paid immediately. I'm not going to cut you slack. And you've got to have your own reasons come into that. So there's a business commercial decision as well as a financial one that comes into it. But make notes, get the customer to agree to it, and make sure you clearly communicate each way. So communication would typically be the invoice is overdue. What's the first trigger? Do you send that first trigger before the invoice is overdue, i.e. a statement? Do you send it immediately afterwards? And what's the tone of that first letter? If you go in all guns blazing thinking, you naughty person, you haven't paid me on time, well, it could be a good reason. They could have had personal issues, they could have forgotten, they may not have received the invoice, the dog ate my homework might come into it, but, you know, all these things are quite plausible. So the second message, if they still haven't complied, you know, the temperature might increase slightly. I would certainly suggest you don't want the gap between the first and the nuclear warhead option to be too long. But ultimately, at the end of it, if it's breaking down, if you're finding the time is dragging on, if you're finding you invest in disproportionate amounts and your radar, your business intuition suggests, actually, this client is just taking advantage. This client has got the cash, but they're not actually paying me and they're being a bit silly with it, you've got a commercial decision to make. Do I want to continue on with that business relationship? Because remember, at that point, all of us in business, we want to make a difference. We want to make an impact. We want to do good things, but we need to make money as well. And we don't want to be financing somebody else's business. We need to make sure our own businesses are sustainable for the now and for the future. So if it comes to it and we're getting no real financial value from that relationship, no strategic value, no impact for our business here, well, actually, it's costing us money. And if you feel that relationship is not really the one that you want, then ultimately the nuclear option is formal recovery steps. My experience of doing recovery steps for myself and helping clients when their relationships with their customers break down and they've got to get money from those customers are, the key stone, the first thing I always look to is, what did you agree at the beginning? What's the nature of the agreement? And that's why we go back to the first point. what you communicate at the outside, the culture, the policy, the agreement, will stand you in good stead in any formal legal recovery. Legal recovery is your last option because typically at that stage, it means the relationship is broken down. It means you're less likely to do business with that client. And therefore, what you must do when you pursue legal recovery processes is make sure you've got the evidence to back up your claim there as well. That's not what we go in business to do, but it's an option. And nowadays, it's much easier to instigate those legal recovery procedures. You need to know what you're doing here. And again, those are situations where we've helped clients out pretty successfully here. But again, once you do that, it's likely the relationship breaks down. Having said that, by the way, I've had situations in my own personal business is where that relationship, for whatever reason, has broken down. We've instigated formal recovery processes. We've won, but we still carry on the relationship with that business. So it doesn't mean it's the end, but it normally does pretty much mean it's the end. Let's continue. So I'm a bit, there we go here. That's much better. So for those of you coming on catch up, we're talking about getting paid on time. We're talking about being more CAT. We've talked about how it's vital that it's not only important to make profit in your business, it's important to keep that cash flow going. And the cash predominantly comes from your customers. The trick in business is we spend money and invest money today. We create a product or a service. We provide that to the end user. They say, that's brilliant. We love you so much. We're willing to pay you for that as well. And that money comes in. So it's a bit of a money spent now. Money comes back later on. It recovers all the costs that we've expended. We make something over the top of that to reward ourselves for the risk and the opportunity we've presented, and the whole world is happy. Now, the last thing about getting paid on time is the toolkit that you've got to access into. So we've talked about culture, attitude, mindset. We've talked about the approach that you should have. So in terms of that method of communication, and these things aren't easy, by the way. And again, I'm going to share a couple of tips with you at the end about if you are in that very small business environment, if you find it difficult to have those conversations with clients, if you find it difficult to talk about money after the event because you don't want to damage your business relationship, I'll share with you a couple of tips at the end about how we can get around that and still maintain a good, positive relationship with the client as well. Now, the last thing is the tools. What's in the toolkit that's going to help us do all these things that I've talked to you about? My first port of call, a real important tool here, is change your mindset in your business away from cost on certain things and think in terms of investing, in terms of what it gets back for you. So I'm a big believer in blending the human being with technology. Technology these days has the opportunity and the power and the capability of saving time in our businesses, making our businesses more productive, making our businesses more efficient. And actually, one place it does have is in the world of what I call cloud and digital accounting. I'm going to be talking about this topic as a separate matter in a future broadcast here, but let me just give you a little bit of insight into what I'm talking about here. Let me shine a spotlight on the world of cloud accounting. I'm talking about cloud accounting here and digital accounting, by the way, in terms of a general proposition. I have my own particular favorite platform that I use that most of our clients tend to be on. Our clients come across different digital platforms. So you've got two ways that you keep a record of what's going on in your business. You can do it in paper format. And paper format for me, by the way, also means spreadsheets. So if you're somebody who likes spreadsheets and who doesn't, it's they're useful tools. If you use that to power your business, if you use spreadsheets or paper to record what's going on in your business, if your business is such that it's quite modest, you're quite happy, you've got one or two clients, that's great. That's how you define how you want your business to develop. More power to your elbow. Fantastic. Stick to that method. If your business is slightly a different proposition in your own mind, you want different things from your business, you want more control, you want more direction, you want more growth, you want more opportunities, you've got a portfolio of clients here, paper and spreadsheets is a waste of time. Ditch them, put them into the bin. You need to embrace cloud and digital accounting. Now, one of the key cornerstones or elements of digital accounting, and I'll throw in a name because it might mean something to a lot of you, is a package called Xero. I'm not a Xero reseller, by the way, so I'm going to restrict this to cloud accounting. But in my personal opinion, Xero is one of the more powerful tools, even though they're all pretty powerful. Is you have the ability to have an automated credit control system built into it. So you can create an invoice, you can send that invoice to a client, you can put all those terms of business, you can put your own personal messages on that, you can use your mobile phone to send them, you can do automated procedures where you follow up a reminder, you can send out statements. What I found is since we ourselves implemented cloud accounting in our own business many years ago, we found it's a much easier way for clients to engage with what's going on. And we generally speaking find that the process of recovery and getting that money coming in, it was much more efficient and timely compared to what we had before. So for me, digital accounting is like spreadsheets on steroids. If you've got clients that you invoice, the investment cost, which is very modest compared to the benefits, the time saving, the efficiency, it's a no-brainer. You've got to do it, and that's why you've got to think about your business. Timing. Timing in terms of those delays, how much time you give to your clients. You can set reminders on your Outlook calendar if you wish to. If you've got Gmail or something similar, there is lots of digital free apps out there that can remind you when those things become due. Also reminding you about when you should be sending out the invoices here. And tracking. Digital systems, for example, enable you to generate reports. So the power comes in capturing all the data to begin with, and then it's about tracking what's going on. And there are many reports that you can pull into. One of my favorites is what's called a customer age report. Now, I'm not talking about their own personal ages, but how old the debt is. So in a snapshot on a dashboard, just like if you imagine your cars, where you've got the dashboard panel telling you how fast the car is going, what fuel is in the tank, you can have a similar one for your accounting system, which tells you who owes you what, how much they owe you. You can go deeper into that, and you can literally have a list of all the customers that you've got in your business, how much you've invoiced them, how much is outstanding, and how old those debts are. Unfortunately, it's a fact, as far as anything is a fact in the world of finance. The longer you leave something to collect it, the more challenging it is to actually collect that money. And it may end up that debt becomes bad. Now, just absorb that for a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Guys, while I take a sip of water, lubricate the old throat. So we're talking about being more cat. Culture, i.e. mindset, your approach to it, which includes things like policies. Attitude. Now, what is the attitude, or the action, I should say, that you're going to take? And if you have a beautiful system, but you don't actually do anything with that, it's a waste of time. And you need things in your toolkit. It's a blend of all those things that if you execute them, in the main, you will be successful in collecting money in. I will say, by the way, I've not yet met a business that offers credit facilities, and this is over 25 plus years, that has never had their fingers burnt. It's unfortunately inevitable that sometimes you'll take your eye off the ball. Sometimes you'll cut somebody some slack. Sometimes you make a misjudgment. Sometimes, by the way, somebody's business, through reasons beyond their control, suffers. In times of calamity, in times of pandemics, whatever that situation is, things are taken outside our control. So there's only a certain amount we can manage and risk avoid in life. So, it could be for no fault of that customer's situation that they find themselves in a tricky position. If a company goes bankrupt, it has a domino effect on everybody else in the supply chain. So you will likely get your fingers burnt at some point. But this is a good way of minimizing it. Now, my last couple of tips here to share with you. If you find those conversations challenging, if you find I don't really want to damage the relationship with the customer, which is perfectly fine, I would do one of two things. First of all, have a separate email address set up in your business and call it something like accounts at whatever your business name is. So all your reminders can come from that email address. So in the customer's mind, there's a separation between you as the provider and your accounts admin team behind it. Number two, the other tip that I would share, and please use it sparingly, I don't want lots of angry phone calls. A tip I normally give to clients is to say, if you're having challenges and you need to have those tougher conversations with clients, I would always introduce that phrase, my accountant's given me a bit of a tongue lashing, and it's all the accountants, by the way. It's not me, I'm a lovely guy, but it's the accountants behind the scene that are chasing me and hassling me. My experience is that the vast majority of times when you mention those lovely but bad boys, the accountants here, most customers tend to react differently to it. They'll still love you, and we're going to be those people that wave their fingers at and say, we wouldn't expect anything less. Okay, guys, hope you got some value out of this week's broadcast here. We're talking about getting paid on time. It's that vital thing you need to make sure your business is here today as well as in the future. We talk about CAT, culture, action, and tools. Have a listen, play back. If you've got any questions, by all means, chuck them into the comments box below. More than happy to feedback on those accordingly. So before we leave you, just a couple of things to make you aware of. So if you love your numbers, which you should do, and want to get closer to them, let me just share some extra resources with you that will be of real benefit and pizzazz. Is that a word? I'm not sure if it does exist, actually. It's your business. And let's go here, by the power of magic. So good to know here. Usual social media channels. Weekly broadcast, I hate numbers here. Not my inspiration for the title, but my inspiration for the content there as well. Check it out. You're going to find some lots of good stuff there. If you think it's good value, obviously I'm not going to get embarrassed if you give it the thumbs up. Share it with friends, colleagues, maybe not competitors, but who knows. So listen, have a great week. I'm going to stop waffling on. Have a great week, and I'll see you guys next week.